Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video on how to do a cost of supply study. This video will be focusing on the index tables and the year guide. And these two tabs go hand in hand with the methodology inputs, and they are a way of setting up your study, going through the granular detail and making sure that everything is organized the way that you need it to be so that you can input your data and get your results at the end. We're going to start on the index tables, and you can see here, you just input your municipality name. That's quite straightforward. And then over here, there's a field for putting the current year, and this field links over to the year guide. You can see it pulls that through here, and then it tells you what year 2, 3, and 4 are. So for clarity here, the tool will reference year 0 and years 1 to 4 quite a lot, so it's important to understand what they mean. And you can see the developers of the tool put these little comments in here to help you understand. But year 0 is the year when the data sets were last complete, so when you'd have your full year's audited financials. So that's typically what you would call, say, last year. You'll have audited financials, those go into your D forms, and that's what we use to populate anything that's called year 0. Year 1 is the current year that we're in, and that gives you a more up-to-date idea of things like tariffs, whether it's an Eskom tariff or a municipal tariff, and helps inform forecasts and predictions for year 2. And year 2 is the year that we are designing our rates for. So you think of it as last year, this year, and next year. The problem with the way that this over here is formatted, you can see that there's a formula here that shows that it's this year plus 1. But because we work in a year that would be, say, 2025/26, that's our financial year, that formula doesn't work so clearly. So it would just be important to note that if you decide to type in here 2025/26, it's going to break this formula, and that might make things a bit more confusing down here. So you can either hard code it and say that you type in over here 2024/25, and then over here say 2026/27, or you can keep it the way that they've designed it and just know that this is the year that the financial year began. And so that when you say you're designing for 2026, it's the 2026/27 financial year. That's up to you. I'm going to leave it like this for now, just for simplicity's sake. Once you've done that, you can go into the more technical side of the index tables. And you can see here, this just shows you the different voltage levels and how they've said the minimum voltage level, the rural and urban split. You don't have to change these, but they're just interesting to read if you'd like to go into it. Here's the index of customer categories. So currently there's space for 25 different customer categories, and the first few are pre-populated, and these match the NERSA D forms exactly. So if you have your NERSA D form filled out according to the pre-populated customer categories, it will look exactly like these here. And I'm going to get back to that in a second. But if we just look at, say, the domestic prepaid customer, it shows you the kind of asset class they would be in. They're a smaller customer, so there would be 400 volts. A manufacturing or industrial customer might be a bigger connection. It will say, you can say if you have monthly data for that customer category, most municipalities won't have monthly data by customer category, so you can leave that as false. You can say whether they have time of use tariffs or not. Many industrial customers will be time of use, so you can change that. I'll show you what happens if I make this true. So let's say we go to the end user tariff inputs. and we go to manufacturing and industrial, you'll see at the moment for this customer, I'll just go to the top. There's no option for time of use. It's only got one standard high season, or should I say all high season tariff. If it has time of use, these should be yellow. So if I want to change that, then I go to index tables and I make that true. Then I go back to the end user tariffs, and you'll see now suddenly I can put in time of use. I will go over this again when we get to the end user tariffs as well. So that's a nice example of how to change that. You can do a manual percentage input for time of use allocation, but you can leave that false because the assumptions that the model uses are the same as Eskom, and they're based on some pretty good research, and there's no real reason to change those unless you do something different as a municipality. Don't worry too much about the wheeling for now. You don't need to touch those. Then just to show you, there's a few more bits of information here that don't really need to be touched, but they are interesting to look at if you would like to go through it in a bit more detail. Once you've done that, you come down to the index of functions. And if you look at the formula that we use for getting to rate design in the cost of supply study, functionalization is one of the key steps. So these functions are quite important. So we have the energy purchases, capex and return, depreciation, network repairs and maintenance, and OPEX. These are some of the different functions. And you can see if they are included in the wires side of the business or the retail side of the business, how they split across the different classes, whether it's an energy related cost, a demand related cost, or customer related cost. And you can allocate them according to how much you think they apply. Generally, the defaults are accepted, but if you want to change those, you can. You don't really need to worry too much about this, but just make sure that if you have added or changed something here, that there is a corresponding label to it too. Touch these. And then these functions here are functions that appear up here. So you can see this one's an important one to take a look at. The function that we use to allocate purchase surplus to, when applicable, we're using OPEX. You can use other things as well, but if you change this from OPEX, it might mix up the results of your study. So we advise to just accept these defaults. Here is the list of Eskom intake points, and I'll reference this again when I talk about the Eskom power purchases. But this is where you put all of your intake points or substations or points of delivery, the PODs, for the municipality. Put their names in here, and then you will have monthly data available because you'll be referring to your Eskom bills. So you keep that as true, and you can fill them in as many as you have. Over here, you can see this is the default time of use periods. You can see off-peak is 12 hours a day, standard 8, peak 4, and you can change those if you want, but generally this is how it goes. Then again, you can see over here the index of the seasons. If it's high season or low season, how many days in the month, which months are high and low season, and then the number of days in the year that correspond with each season. Then when it comes down to the Eskom tariffs and charges, again, I'll reference this again in the Eskom power purchases video, but there's the 3 different charge categories that people will be familiar with: energy, demand, and fixed charges. And then these are the different charge, or the different units for the charges. So if it's an energy charge, it could be cents per kilowatt hour, cents per kVAR. There's rand per kVA for demand. There's fixed charges. You can add one if you need to. If Eskom does implement a new kind of charge with a different unit, you can add it here. And then these are the Eskom charges. And there's a whole video that I'll do about how to update these for the new Munich Flex. So I won't go into it in this video. Then the index of non-Eskom power purchases. If the municipality buys power from something that isn't Eskom, so maybe an IPP or a renewable IPP, or they have their own self-generation, this is where you can put it in. And that links to this tab over here where you'll recognize these. So you don't really need to change these too much, but if you are a municipality that gets power from somewhere else, this is what you'll be looking at. And then if the municipality has a whole bunch of charges, they can add them here. So generally a municipality, when they charge their customers for electricity, they'll charge them an active energy rate, maybe a demand charge and a basic charge, but there could be another charge similar to Eskom. You can input that there and add a unit from the drop-down list. So depending on what it is. So say maybe you have a service charge. You could type that in there and then say Rand per account per month as an example. This over here will link to your end user tariffs. So if I go to end user tariffs, you'll see now how I made that time of use, and I've now added a new charge over here with the Rand per account per day. So it only allows space for 5, but typically you won't go over more than 5. So this is just a way that you can change that. Remember to, and I'll touch on this again when I make a video on end user tariffs, but don't change these charges here. Always go back to the index table to charge them. And that's all for this video.